first introduce myself. My name is Allen Lau. I'm a three-time entrepreneur. I'm the former CEO and co-founder of Wattpad. Wattpad is famous for its storytelling capability, but a lot of people may not know we became a deep tech company. We invested a lot in AI, started in year 2012. I would be proud to say we became an AI company before AI became cool. So that's when we became an AI company. And for myself, I'm also very proud to say that I might be the only person or a few other people on IMDb that actually have an engineering degree. I'm an electrical engineer, so of course I ran a software company for a number of years, but I also know hardware, I know semiconductor, I know quantum, I know energy, and I know telecom. Now, after taking the final curtain call as an entrepreneur, I'm turning myself into an investor. I'm a co-founder and founding partner and also operating partner at Two Small Fish Ventures. Keep a long story short, Two Small Fish is not a deep tech only VC, but we absolutely invest in deep tech. A fun fact is all three partners at the firm, Eva and Brandon and myself, we are all engineers. I mentioned I had semiconductor experience before. Eva used to work for ATI and now AMD, and Brandon used to work for NVIDIA. So we know software and hardware, and this is our sweet spot, this is our space. And in terms of investments, we made investments in BenchSci, which is an AI company used by the top 16 of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies in the world. Ada, we wrote a check in 2015. It's a generative AI company before even the term was coined in 2015. And also SheerTax, it's unbreakable pantyhose. You would think, why is it a deep tech company? Well, it's advanced material. It's very, very hard to turn bulletproof material into a pantyhose. Trust me on this one. And by the way, I'm wearing the men's socks today. If you're interested, we can talk afterwards. I guess I would like to start off the talk with this statement. We all know that we are very strong in academic research, but we are not too good at commercialization. It's a cultural issue. It could be a policy issue, perhaps lack of capital, but I do want to zoom in on this one thing. We don't have enough scientists who take the plunge and turn themselves into entrepreneurs. And that's partially explained why we don't have enough deep tech startups in this country. I'm not saying this is the only reason. I'm just saying this is what my talk will be focusing on. I could talk about policy too, but perhaps after today's talk, well, I'm going to Ottawa tomorrow. Guess what I'm going to do? Tech policy. So I would also argue that the golden age of deep tech is ahead of us. I think we are in the best time to do it. And before I explain the reasons, I would like to spend a few minutes to talk about the evolution of deep tech. I know this audience, you know deep tech very well, but allow me to use that to set the context. Deep tech, the definition, it requires substantial scientific or engineering challenges. And that definition of substantial changes over time. In the 1930s, about 100 years ago, what you're looking at is the Turing machine. It's not the world first, but one of the first computers in the world. And what you're looking at is the replica in the movie, The Imitation Game. If you haven't watched that movie, you should spend a couple of hours tonight to watch that. And in the 60s, this is a real, not a movie anymore, this is a picture of Fairchild Semiconductor. Compared to today's fab, this is like a high school or perhaps a university lab. And because it doesn't look that high tech, but it was state of the art, it was deep tech back then. And in the 80s, this is the cell phone mobile phone at that time. This is a screen capture of the movie The Wall Street. This cell phone cost $4,000 at that time, and it weighed as much as your toaster. Extremely difficult to carry, but it was Deeptech back then. 40 years later, you can buy this Android phone for $70 with 10 megabyte, three 10 megabyte cameras at the back. And if you downgrade that to 2, I can save you $10. You can get this for $60. So what I'm saying is we have to recognize that the definition of deep tech changes over time. What was deep tech might no longer be deep tech. So let's zoom into the past 30 years. There were 3 different deep tech, perhaps, platform shifts, I would say. They were commercialization of deep techs. You know, PC, once upon a time, it was deep tech as well. So keep a long story short, in the past 3 platform shifts, the biggest beneficiaries were the 5 billion internet consumers and the relevant businesses. These 3 platform shifts, when they achieve mass adoption, they change the behavior of consumer and democratize access, and that's the key. Unlock new values that weren't previously possible. So these 3 platform shifts are also the biggest enablers of shallow tech. Well, I'm not sure you remember the #1 in App Store in December 2008. Yeah, sorry, the clicker is driving me nuts. It doesn't quite work. We need some deep tech for the clicker. But that was the #1 in the App Store in year 2008. I'm not going to spend time to explain what this app does, okay? But how low it could go. That was my reaction at that time. But joking aside, this is the marketing material when Instagram launched in 2010. Now, of course, there's a lot of tech behind Instagram, but at that point in time, it's a very, very simple app for people to upload your pictures and download your pictures and share it to other people. A very simple concept, very simple, easy to build. And well, in 2006, I started my own company. It's called Wattpad. It's the screenshot I took when we first launched. I was holding the phone, the camera like this to take this picture. It was my thumb, if you want to know. It's also very, very easy for us to build. It's just a mobile reading app on the Razr phone. And then, as I mentioned earlier, 6 years later, I spare you all the details, we became a deep tech company. We invested a lot in AI. We worked with MIT, we worked with the lab in U of T to build this technology. But what I really want to say, the defensibility of these products came from data and user experience. It wasn't deep tech initially. Again, eventually, many of the companies, including Wattpad, including Instagram, became deep tech company, but not initially. So now we are in the midst of the next platform shift. And that's why this is important, because this time is different. Because the golden age of shallow tech is solidly behind us now, we are entering the golden age of deep tech. Why? Because of the platform shift and also talents and ecosystem. Let me zoom in on platform shift first. Because the days of building a shallow tech company and collect of data is mostly behind us now, because the incumbents, including Wattpad, including Instagram, including Google, including all the big tech companies, they already collected a lot of data. It's very, very hard to disrupt them right now. So if you want to start a new company, I think your defensibility, your differentiator coming from Deeptech is almost a necessity. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but I would say it's becoming much more important than in the past decade or two. The second point, I believe AI supercharges Deeptech development. As you can see on the screen, I'm not going to repeat that. You can do a lot of Deeptech things so much easier. With generative AI, it feels like you have 1,000 interns, free interns, working for you. And this is a very important point because building a business is very, very difficult. Many of you are scientists here. To build an amazing company, the science perhaps is only 30% of an amazing Deeptech company. The other 80% is actually in building the organization, hiring the right people, hiring people to do the 1,000 intern work that I talk about. But now you can actually use generative AI to help you a lot. In a way, perhaps just for illustration purpose, it's not 30% of Deeptech would contribute to the success of your company anymore. Perhaps it's 50%, perhaps it's 60%. I don't know there's a best way to quantify that, but definitely a whole lot easier to build that organization early on. And talents. I think we all know that we have a lot of talents here. All the godfathers, well, most of the AI godfathers, where do they live? In Canada. And semiconductor as well, we have really good reputation in the world. And I want to zoom in on the second bullet and the third bullet. Let me share a story with you. It was 2012. I was fundraising in the Valley. I talked to quite a few VCs in the Valley. And the question that they asked me is like the following. Allen, when are you going to move to the Valley? They don't ask me if you are going to the Valley. They ask me when. But they were all shocked by my answer. No, I have no plan to do that. I want to build this company in Toronto. I want to build this company in Canada. And my thesis at that time, it was, well, I don't need. First of all, I could not compete with Airbnb, Uber, Google, Facebook. They suck up all the best talents. And as a startup company with 25 employees, I probably got the B player, probably C players or D player, and it's just impossible to build an amazing company. Whereas in Canada, it's a smaller pond, but I could be one of the big fish in a smaller pond. I could attract the best possible talent, and I don't need to hire 10,000 people. I just need to hire perhaps 20 for me to get to the next stage. And of course, 10 years later, I have maybe 5 employees. Well, when I stepped down as CEO, maybe I have 5 employees in the US. The other 295, they are either in Toronto or Halifax. So it's proven. I don't believe I'm the only company doing that. There were quite a few other companies scale from 10, 20 to hundreds of employees in Toronto, Canada. And 10 years later, the outcome is that we have quite a few serial entrepreneurs like me that can recycle the knowledge and experience. And not only that, we built the team, and now we have a lot of scale-up executives, scale-up leadership in the country as well. And one of the arguments at that time, 10 years ago, was, Allen, you just cannot hire leaders as you scale. And now it's no longer a problem. So I would argue that today in Canada, especially in Toronto, if you want to build an amazing company, no one would ask you would question you whether you could do it or not. It's a matter of your own execution. And lastly, hybrid work. I think in the last panel, we kind of touched on that already. Not going to spend a lot of time on it. But with hybrid work, if you have an amazing talent living outside of Canada, you can still hire that person. It's not that big a deal anymore. You don't have to force everyone in the same location. In a way, it levels the playing field. And lastly, ecosystem. I'm not sure you know, Mars is actually the largest innovation center in the entire North America. Yeah, I just think Canada is kind of stuck at marketing. This is amazing. This is like the largest and nobody knows, right? So joking aside, we have Mars, we have CDL, we have many other programs or incubators, lab to market, you know. These programs or accelerators many of them did not exist 10 years ago. Now, another building block in the ecosystem is fulfilled by Mars, CDL, Lab to Market, and many other programs. And then capital, we touched on this in the last panel as well. There are more VCs, like Two Small Fish, that are willing to invest in deep tech. Again, we are not an exclusively deep tech firm. We invest in shallow tech as well, for lack of a better term. But we have portfolio companies like Cyanide. They enable 3D chips. They are based in Edmonton, and we are very comfortable with that. And one of the very game-changing thing that BDC did was they set up a $200 million deep tech fund that exclusively focused on deep tech. And you just can't imagine this 10 years ago. I'm not saying this will solve all the funding problems, but we are absolutely on the right track. And also, of course, there are other sources of support and capital, like NSERC and many government funding, which you all know already. I don't have to spend time on it. So I believe our future is really bright because all the building blocks are already in place. The only thing missing, you, and you. You need to start the company. You need to turn your idea, your science project, and commercialize it and turn this into an amazing company. And I believe this is the best time to build. Thank you.
So intellectual property has come up a lot today, tech transfer offices and so forth. What is the role of open source in terms of software and hardware in terms of closing that commercialization gap when it comes to hardware or AI productization as well? So are patents needed or open source can reign?
Yeah, well, you know, allow me to use the mobile phone slides that I share as an analogy. The reason why we had these $70, $60 Android phone is because Android is open source. They don't even have to pay Google. They have to pay Google to install the Gmail on that phone, but the operating system itself is free. In a way, generally speaking, open source or lower access, I would use the broader theme of democratizing access, which I mentioned earlier, which should, in theory at least, but I'm a true believer in that democratization of access would enable people living in Toronto, living in Yellowknife, living in New Brunswick, living in other places, to build a deep tech company is so much more easier. It's all about lowering the barrier to entry. Again, I don't mean to say that the deep tech expertise is not required. That's table stake. But again, like I mentioned, to build a deep tech company, you need more than just deep tech. You need people skill. You need other technologies, other building blocks. And open source potentially can help some of that.
The question at the start I thought was a really interesting one, which is we need more scientists to also be entrepreneurial and be entrepreneurs. So the question I have for you and for anybody in the audience is, are we asking too much of technical people to be technically amazingly proficient, innovative with technology, and then also know how to be entrepreneurial and commercialize things? Is that asking too much of scientists?
Well, I guess it's a very good question. That's a question that I think about this a lot. Am I the lucky one? is it for everyone? And I would say, as an engineer turned entrepreneur, the last 15 years of my life is 24/7 and very, very intense because knowing how to write code or knowing how to design semiconductor chips is very, very different than running a business, right? One is high EQ. Perhaps running a business is high IQ to be a deep tech scientist, but you need high EQ to run a business. In a way, you're not wrong. I guess not everyone can do it. It's not an easy journey. But what I would also say is based on my past experience, most of the amazing tech companies, they are all founder-driven. The founder stay till the amazing outcome, whether it's public or acquisition or at scale, they stay all the way through. And the trick is the entrepreneur, the engineer has to learn other skills along the way, and perhaps it takes a village. It needs more people, not just the entrepreneur or the scientist himself or herself. What I can, perhaps it's a long answer, and perhaps I'm not asking you directly. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a different journey.
So I'm Andrea Matheson. I'm one of the EIRs responsible for the Lab to Market program and helping those engineers that you just spoke of and PhDs actually become business people. And I'm going to tell you that it's been unbelievable to watch people who already have like amazing skill sets and are extremely bright. Some of the brightest people I've ever worked with are in this program. And then being able to, as you said, it's a village. They're going on it, the journey with many others around them who are helping them to get that knowledge. That is no different than being a business person who needs a great tech person or other tech people around them to build shallow tech or other types of technology. So I think that's probably where I see the gap, that a lot of people think of it in only one particular way, that, you know, how could a PhD become a business person? But how does a business person become a tech entrepreneur in a lot of cases, right? We see that. People have great ideas, but they don't have any of the ability or skill set to do that. It takes a village on both sides of the equation. So this is a great example of actually seeing all these engineers, and we have many examples actually in this room of people who have taken the knowledge and they're just so hungry for it, and they've become, we see it over 16 weeks, go, oh my God. And you heard from the first one this morning, now Benita, if she's still here, there is an unbelievable example. She just kept asking, oh my goodness, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do it? And look at where she is today, right? So it's just the other side of the coin, but I don't think people think of it as that. Business people who have great ideas need all the tech support they can get, and then this is the opposite. It's from an engineering perspective.
I think there's actually a lot of technical people that make the leap, and vice versa, but we just don't hear those stories. Just like how we don't hear the stories of Mars being the largest startup supporter in North America, and I'm sure we've got dozens of other stories that need to be told. So my question is somewhat selfish because I'm thinking a lot about like the ecosystem and not just funding and not just deep tech and all that, but what should we be doing to solve our marketing problem? And is there any one organization that should be leading the charge, or is this something that we do more holistically?
Yeah, I think culturally we are just not very good at marketing. Let's call a spade a spade. But I think this is an easier skill to learn than, say, deep tech. Deep tech is so hard, right? And there's a reason for that. I guess I would say in the past 10 years, 20 years, increasingly we have seen much better marketing people in tech, especially in tech companies. I think in 10 years ago, I couldn't even hire the first marketing person. Now, so much easier to hire marketing leader that has previous experience at tech scale-ups. So I think it's just a matter of timing. I don't think we can solve all the problems overnight, but definitely we are heading in the right direction. Like the bullet point that I share, leaders with experience in scale-ups, we have a lot in this country now. We might not be the best, but we are definitely